In 1978, a movie made an extraordinary promise to audiences. You'll believe a man can fly. It sounds almost impossible, but somehow Superman the movie delivered on that promise. Directed by Richard Donner and released in 1978, this ambitious adaptation of the DC Comics hero didn't just arrive, it redefined what a comic book movie could be. Made with sincerity, scale, and an unwavering belief in its hero, Superman set the template for the blockbusters that followed. Its legacy isn't just about influence, it's about tone, about treating myths seriously, asking audiences to believe. So join me, Steve Clark, as I take a look at 10 good things about Superman the movie. Number 1. Richard Donner's verisimilitude. Director Richard Donner wasn't the first choice to helm Superman. After original director Guy Hamilton had to step away for tax reasons and the production relocated from Italy to the UK, Donner was brought in, fresh off the massive success of The Omen in 1976. At that point, Superman had already gone through several iterations. Mario Puzo's original script was reportedly over 500 pages long and took itself incredibly seriously. Then writers Robert Benton and David Newman were brought in to lighten the tone, but swung too far in the other direction, leaning into camp. At one stage, Telly Savalas was even set to cameo as Kojak. When Donner came on board, he had a very clear vision. This Superman would feel real. Working alongside creative consultant Tom Mankiewicz, Donner pushed for substantial rewrites to strip away the parody and treat the material with sincerity. He famously adopted the word verisimilitude, meaning the appearance of being true or real, and he had banners printed and hung around the production offices to remind the cast and crew of the mission. If the world felt real, the audience would accept the cape. That was Donner's gamble. No winks to camera, no self-aware humour about the costume, no apology for the mythology, just a grounded emotional truth that would allow audiences to invest in Kal-El and eventually believe that a man could fly. And you can see that philosophy across the film's 3 distinct sections. Krypton is stark, alien, almost operatic. Smallville is warm and grounded, pure Americana, with a visual palette that feels almost Terrence Malick inspired. Metropolis becomes a bustling, recognisable city. Each world feels distinct, but crucially, each feels real. Because Donner anchors everything in emotional truth. Even the helicopter rescue, a man in red boots catching Lois Lane mid-air, feels believable. What could have been camp becomes myth. What could have been parody becomes romance. Superman works because Richard Donner refused to treat it as a joke. He treated it as legend, and nearly 50 years later, audiences still respond to that sincerity. Number 2. Christopher Reeve, the perfect Superman. Before Christopher Reeve stepped into the red and blue suit, Superman had been offered to a veritable who's who of Hollywood. James Caan, James Brolin, Christopher Walken, Charles Bronson, Robert Redford and Paul Newman had already turned it down, and even future 80s action icons Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone lobbied for the role. But Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz believed Superman shouldn't be a movie star. He should be Superman. As they widened the casting net, a problem quickly emerged. As Mankiewicz later said, they could find men with incredible physiques who couldn't act, or brilliant actors who simply didn't look the part. Then casting director Lynn Stalmaster brought in a relatively unknown Juilliard-trained actor, Christopher Reeve. At the time of his screen test, Reeve was lean, almost gawky, and the suit didn't quite fit. There were visible sweat patches on the suit during the audition that betrayed the confidence of the character Reeve was auditioning for, but Donner didn't see the nerves. He saw Superman. Reeve played him as sincere, stoic, and utterly without irony. When asked to wear a muscle suit, Reeve refused. Instead, he trained rigorously under David Prowse, yes, Darth Vader himself, transforming his physique and adding nearly 10 kilograms of muscle. But the real transformation wasn't just physical, it was performance. Reeve's dual portrayal of Superman and Clark Kent is nothing short of masterful. His Superman radiates decency. When he tells Lois during the apartment interview that he stands for truth, justice, and American way, and she mocks the idealism, he doesn't flinch. When he says, "I never lie," you believe him completely. And then there's this moment. After the interview, when Clark arrives for his date, a clearly dazed and starstruck Lois steps out of the room, and Clark removes his glasses. In seconds, through nothing but posture and breath, Reeve transforms. His shoulders squares, his voice deepens, his presence fills the room. For a fleeting second, he considers telling her. And then he retreats. The glasses go back on, the shoulders slump, the awkwardness returns. It's one of the finest pieces of physical acting in cinema. No effects, no music cue, just an actor in total control of his body. That's why Christopher Reeve remains the benchmark. Others have worn the cape, some have been excellent, but none have quite captured that delicate balance of humility, strength, vulnerability, and heroism. Nearly 50 years later, when people think of Superman, they still see Christopher Reeve. Number 3. Building the world. Krypton, Smallville, and Metropolis. Sticking with Richard Donner's commitment to keeping things real, which is admittedly easier to say than verisimilitude, the production design team had an enormous task. They didn't just have to make Earth feel authentic, they had to make another planet feel believable too. Production designer John Barry, fresh off Star Wars, alongside art directors Stuart Craig and Norman Reynolds, were responsible for creating worlds that felt lived in, textured, and emotionally grounded. Let's start with Krypton. Built and filmed at Shepperton Studios on the 007 stage, Krypton was designed around what was called geotechnology, an aesthetic where buildings, services, even technology appeared grown from enormous crystal formations. In this version of the mythos, Kryptonians depend on crystals for everything. Knowledge, communication, transportation. The result is striking, cold, analytical, almost sterile. The giant white dome rising from crystalline landscapes feels monumental and alien. The reflective costumes worn by the Kryptonian Council shimmer under Jeffrey Unsworth's lighting, reinforcing that sense of emotional distance. Even the Fortress of Solitude reflects that visual continuity. When Clark builds it in the Arctic, its crystalline structure mirrors Krypton, visually tying his two worlds together. And then we cut to Smallville. Warm earth tones, open skies, rolling farmland in Alberta, standing in for Kansas. It's photographed with an almost poetic softness. Where Krypton feels rigid and clinical, Smallville feels human and grounded. Then we arrive in Metropolis. The Daily Planet interiors feel bustling and authentic, a living newsroom full of noise and movement. And then of course there's Lex Luthor's lair, 200 feet beneath Park Avenue. The entrance was filmed at Grand Central Terminal, but the cavernous interior was built on a massive stage at Pinewood. It resembles a grand, decaying train station, complete with library, control room, map chamber, even a swimming pool. It's theatrical, yes, but still grounded in physical space. None of these worlds feel artificial, and that's the achievement. Because the environments feel tangible, the audience accepts the extraordinary within them. We believe Krypton could exist. We believe Smallville could raise a hero. We believe Metropolis would need saving. And once you believe the world, believing the man becomes easy. Number 4. Why the characters matter. Having built these worlds so carefully, Donner and Mankiewicz needed to populate them with characters who felt real. Whether you're a scientist on Krypton, a Kansas farmer, or an alien trying to live a double life on Earth, you have to feel human. If you'd asked me as a kid whether I preferred this film or Superman 2, I wouldn't have hesitated. Superman 2 every time. It starts with action, it's loud, it's exciting. When I was young, the first Superman film felt slow. You don't even see Superman properly until nearly 48 minutes in, and you don't see him do anything spectacular until well over an hour. What can I say, I was a stupid child. One of the things I now love most about Superman is how patient it is. It takes its time building the world, and, more importantly, building the people who inhabit that world. Even on Krypton, in a relatively short sequence, we understand Jor-El. He's calm, rational, dignified. Whatever you think about Marlon Brando's paycheck and the fact that he couldn't be asked to learn his lines, his performance does have real gravitas. He sells the myth. But it's Smallville where the emotional foundation is laid. We meet a teenage Clark, played by Jeff East, later dubbed by Christopher Reeve, but we see a young man struggling to belong. He's stronger, faster, different. He wants Lana Lang to notice him. He's frustrated, isolated, and crucially, he's holding himself back. The scene between Clark and Jonathan Kent is one of the most important in the entire film. Clark is angry that he can't show the world what he can do. Jonathan gently reminds him that he's here for something bigger than touchdowns. And then Jonathan dies. Not in a fire, not in an accident, not in a tornado, just a heart attack. And Clark learns the most painful lesson of all. Even with all that power, he can't save everyone, and that moment defines him. Later, when Clark tells his mother he has to leave Smallville, the scene feels like a Norman Rockwell painting brought to life. It's tender, it's restrained, and John Williams' score lifts it into almost something mythic. This is Clark choosing his destiny. Superman doesn't rush these moments. it earns them. So when the heroics finally begin, when he steps into that suit, it doesn't feel like spectacle. It feels inevitable. It feels earned. By the time Clark puts on the suit, we already know who he is, and that's why we believe him. Number 5. Superman's first rescue. Alright, I've talked enough about philosophy, world building and production design. It's time for liftoff. Superman's first major set piece, his introduction to the world, comes with the rescue of Lois Lane. Lois is preparing for an interview with the president and boards the Daily Planet helicopter, an absolutely iconic piece of 70s design, and yes, I always wanted that toy as a kid. But what begins as routine quickly turns disastrous. A mechanical failure causes the helicopter to tangle in its moorings, leaving it dangling off the roof of the Daily Planet building. The pilot is unconscious. Lois is suspended by a slipping seat belt. The tension is beautifully staged. A crowd gathers below. They can only watch, powerless. Meanwhile, Clark Kent is casually leaving work. He notices Lois's yellow beret on the pavement. He looks up, and everything changes. He ducks away, briefly considers the open phone booth, a moment that some argue is a cheeky nod to the audience. Maybe it is, but Reeve plays it with such sincerity that it never feels cynical. Instead, Clark chooses the revolving doors. Seconds later, he emerges transformed in his bad outfit and shoots up into the sky. As Lois finally loses her grip and begins to fall, Superman intercepts her mid-air with the wonderful line, "Easy miss, I've got you." And Lois's response is now legendary. "You got me? Who's got you?" To which Superman responds with a short laugh. It's perfect. But the danger isn't over. The helicopter tears free and plunges downward. In a breathtaking image, Superman catches the helicopter in one arm while holding Lois in the other. The way that moment is framed, as Superman carries both Lois and the helicopter back up to the roof, is now iconic. When he gently sets them down on the roof, he reassures Lois that statistically, flying is still the safest way to travel. The smile, the calm, the effortless charm. When she asks who he is, he replies simply, "A friend," and flies away. That's the moment. That's when the world meets Superman. Because the film has taken its time, because we've spent so long building Clark, this rescue doesn't feel like spectacle for spectacle's sake. It feels earned. The direction, the visual effects, John Williams' soaring score, Margot Kidder's breathless performance, it all converges into one unforgettable sequence. It's not just a superhero saving someone, it's myth taking flight. It remains one of the greatest introductions to a hero in cinema history, and it's also my favourite moment from any comic book movie. Number 6. Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. It feels only right to follow the helicopter rescue by talking about Margot Kidder's exceptional performance as Lois Lane. Her reaction in that sequence is unforgettable. Breathless, overwhelmed, sharp, funny, but Lois is far more than just someone to be rescued. This version of Lois Lane is tough, driven, takes no shit. She takes her job seriously and refuses to be patronised. When she tells Clark that she doesn't want to be stuck with kids and a mortgage, we believe her. She's not waiting to be saved, she's chasing the next headline. And that's what makes her romance with Superman so compelling. In the apartment interview scene, one of my favourite sequences in the film, Lois is doing her job. She's professional, she's curious, but underneath that professionalism, you can see the emotional shift happening. She's falling for him. Kidder balances that transition beautifully. When she asks Superman delicate, almost absurd questions about his body, about his biology, it never feels silly, it feels human. It feels like someone trying to understand the impossible. The chemistry between Kidder and Reeve is electric. In fact, it was so strong in screen tests that it helped secure Reeve the role. You believe every glance, every pause, every awkward moment. Even the famous exchange about the colour of her underwear, which could have easily tipped into something crass, feels charming and sincere in their hands. There's no cynicism, no smirk, just two people caught in something unexpected. And that's why Lois is so important. She doesn't just fall for Superman. She challenges him, she questions him, and she humanises him. And ultimately, she names him in a moment that could have come across as cheesy, but in Kidder's hands it works. Without Lois Lane, Superman is a symbol. With her, he becomes a man. And that's what makes the love story, and everything that follows, truly matter. Number 7. John Williams' Super Score. For anyone playing a 10 Good Things drinking game, yes, it's time for me to talk about the score. John Williams had just come off the enormous success of Star Wars when he was brought in to compose the music for Superman, and once again he delivered something extraordinary. Richard Donner knew he had something special almost immediately. At the very first recording session, he was apparently so thrilled with the Superman theme that he ruined the first take by shouting out how fantastic it was. And honestly, you can understand his reaction. The Superman theme is one of the most iconic pieces of film music ever written. What's remarkable about it is how Williams structures it. The piece is really built from three separate musical ideas: a triumphant fanfare, a bold heroic march, and a sweeping romantic theme. Each part could stand on its own, but Williams weaves them together into something that feels completely unified. It's the same kind of musical storytelling he would go on to use in the Indiana Jones theme, where two distinct melodies combine into one unforgettable identity. I love the Superman theme so much that at one point it almost feels like the orchestra is saying Superman, and the way the piece builds, slowly gathering momentum before bursting into that soaring march, feels like pure liftoff. Williams doesn't just write a theme for the hero though, his music defines the different worlds of the film. The Krypton theme is majestic and mysterious, perfectly matching the crystalline, alien beauty of that world. And then there's the love theme, Can You Read My Mind, which plays during Superman and Lois's nighttime flight across Metropolis. It's one of the most romantic moments in the film, even if the spoken narration has always been a little divisive, but that melody is pure Williams. The remarkable thing about the Superman theme is that nearly 50 years later, it still defines the character. It's so ingrained in our cultural memory that when later films choose to reference it, it feels less like nostalgia and more like acknowledgement. Because for many people, that music is Superman. I was thrilled to hear it being used in James Gunn's Superman film. It's heroic, it's romantic, it's hopeful, and like the character himself, it feels timeless. Number 8. Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor. The late great Gene Hackman may not have seemed like the obvious choice to play Lex Luthor, but in hindsight, it's an inspired piece of casting. Hackman was actually keen to join the film because he wanted to work with Marlon Brando, even though their characters never share a scene. He did, however, have two conditions. He didn't want to shave his mustache, and he didn't want to shave his head. Richard Donner struck a deal with him. If Hackman shaved his mustache, Donner would shave off his own. Hackman agreed, shaved it off, and Donner promptly revealed that his moustache had been fake the entire time. It broke the ice immediately and helped establish the playful relationship between the director and his star. Hackman did win one battle though, he did keep his hair for the role. And if you watch closely, you'll notice Lex's hairstyle changes throughout the film, subtly suggesting that he's wearing different wigs. It's only right at the end that we see the character bald. Now, the version of Lex Luthor in this film is quite different from the comics. Comic book Luthor is often portrayed as a cold, calculating corporate genius, a sociopath driven by jealousy and power. Hackman's Luthor still has the intellect, but there's also a strong comedic streak running through the performance. He surrounds himself with a bizarre little entourage, the wonderfully dim Otis, played by Ned Beatty, and the glamorous Eve Tessmacher, played by Valerie Perrine. Much of the time, Lex behaves almost like a sarcastic stage performer, firing off insults, mocking Otis, and enjoying the sound of his own voice a little too much. But underneath the humour, the character is still dangerous. His grand plan is essentially a real estate scam, but one that involves detonating nuclear missiles and killing thousands of innocent people. And when Miss Tessmacher points out that her own mother will be killed as part of the scheme, Lex simply shrugs it off. That's the moment the mask slips. The other moment where Hackman shows the darker side of the character is when he tricks Superman into revealing the kryptonite hidden in the lead box. Once Superman begins to weaken, Lex becomes cold and almost cruel, placing the kryptonite around Superman's neck and calmly watching him drown. It's a chilling shift. Hackman walks a delicate line throughout the film, balancing comedy with genuine menace, and somehow makes it work. And it gives Superman a villain who is both entertaining and memorable. Although personally I think Hackman really gets to have even more fun in Superman 2 when he starts trading insults with General Zod, but that might be a conversation for another 10 Good Things. And speaking of General Zod, number 9, the setup for General Zod. Producers the Salkinds liked to be efficient. When making the Musketeers movies in the 1970s with director Richard Lester, they secretly made 2 films without telling the filmmakers, the crew, or the actors. This led to the Salkind Clause being created by the Screen Actors Guild, to to ensure that film producers were upfront with cast and crew about how many films were being made. When they began production on Superman, the plan was ambitious. Shoot Superman and Superman 2 simultaneously, both directed by Richard Donner. I'm not going to go into what happened with Superman 2 and Richard Lester, but the information is out there if you want to read it. That decision had a fascinating legacy in film history, but what matters for this movie is how cleverly the sequel is set up right at the beginning. Because during the opening scenes on Krypton, we meet the villains who will dominate Superman 2. General Zod, played with magnificent intensity by Terrence Stamp, along with his followers Ursa and Non, played by Sarah Douglas and Jack O'Halloran. In a brief but powerful scene, Zod and his allies are put on trial before the Kryptonian Council and condemned for treason. Jor-El himself delivers the sentence that banishes them to the Phantom Zone. We don't learn every detail of their crimes, but we learn enough. Zod has attempted to overthrow Krypton's leadership, and from Jor-El's testimony, it's clear that not even Krypton's children would have been safe if Zod had succeeded. What makes the scene so effective is Terrence Stamp. In only a few moments of screen time, he establishes Zod as both intelligent and terrifying. His performance shifts from icy calm to explosive rage in seconds. At first he almost sounds reasonable, inviting Jor-El to join him, but when Jor-El refuses, his composure cracks. Stamp suddenly erupts, screaming that one day Jor-El and even his heirs will kneel before him. The close-up on Zod's face as he loses his composure is a great choice from Donner, as the film cuts between Zod's eyes burning with fury and then his mouth as he screams his threats. We know immediately that Zod is a force to be reckoned with. And just like that, the sequel has been planted. It's a brilliant piece of storytelling. Even if you've never seen Superman 2, the threat is clear. Somewhere out there, General Zod is waiting. Number 10. You'll believe a man can fly. When the marketing campaign for Superman launched, the poster carried an extraordinary promise. You'll believe a man can fly. That's a bold claim for any film to make, but remarkably, Richard Donner and his team delivered. I won't dive too deeply into the technical specifics, the wire rigs, the optical effects, the painstaking work that went into making Superman fly, but what matters is the illusion works, and it works brilliantly. The first time we truly see Superman in action, rescuing Lois from their helicopter, the effect is astonishing. The moment he intercepts her mid-air feels completely believable, and the image of him holding Lois in one arm while catching the falling helicopter with the other is pure comic book myth brought to life. The camera even lingers on the shot, almost daring the audience to question it, but the scene holds up. And as John Williams' score soars underneath it all, the illusion becomes complete. For a moment, we really do believe a man can fly. But Superman doesn't end with triumph alone. Later in the film, when Lex Luthor's missile strikes the San Andreas Fault, the tone shifts dramatically. In a brutal and surprisingly grounded sequence, Lois is trapped in her car as tons of earth collapse around her. The film doesn't shy away from the horror of the moment. When Superman finally reaches her, it's too late, and suddenly the most powerful being on Earth is helpless. Christopher Reeve plays the moment with heartbreaking restraint. As he lifts Lois from the wreckage and gently places her on the ground, he lets out a quiet, broken cry. The camera pulls back, showing Superman standing alone beside her body. It echoes the lesson he learned as a young man when Jonathan Kent died. For all his power, he cannot save everyone. And that's when Superman makes the choice. Defying the warning of his father, Jor-El, who told him never to interfere with human history, he flies into the sky and turns back time itself to save the woman he loves. In that moment, Kal-El stopped acting like a distant Kryptonian observer. He becomes human. And finally, the film closes with one of the most iconic images in cinema. Superman drops Lex Luthor into prison and flies into the dawn sky above the Earth. As John Williams' theme rises once more, he turns towards the camera and smiles. Not just a smile, but a promise. A promise that Superman will always be there. A promise that the adventure isn't over. In 1978, audiences believed a man could fly. Nearly 50 years later, we still do. So those are my 10 good things about Superman. What do you think? Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and enable notifications so you'll be notified of future videos. If you could also share the video with your friends and like-minded movie fans, I'd really appreciate it. There'll be plenty more 10 Good Things videos to come. I'll see you again soon, but in the meantime, good night.